There should be a place for everything, and everything in its place, once said a wise man. And since I'm doing a video on citation, you really think I should know who said that, right? Is citation exciting and glamorous work? No, not really. But it's something that serves a real purpose. We need to give credit where credit is due, and not only does it show who originated the ideas we're dealing with, it also shows the level of detail that you put into doing the assignment. So let's learn how. So let's talk about the proper way to cite stuff and to format your paper and all this. Maybe we should have done this earlier in the semester, but we were about ready to start working on a research paper, so I figured that this was probably the best time. Can't front load everything. The thing to keep in mind is that when you put your name at the top of the paper, you are telling the reader that everything from here down is mine. I created it, unless I say otherwise. So giving credit where credit's due is important, particularly when you think about it as if you put down something without a citation, you're saying someone else's idea is yours. We're academics. What do we have besides ideas? But first, before we get into the citation game, let's talk about MLA. MLA is the abbreviation for the Modern Language Association. It's an association of college and high school English people. I don't mean English as in, hi-ho, let's have tea. I mean English as the people who teach the literature classes and the comp classes. As a literature-based discipline, they have certain rules and certain methods they want you to follow. They're not the only citation method in the world. There's the APA, which is the American Psychological Association's model for how to do stuff, including citations and formatting papers and all that. And of course, they're used by psychologists, but they're also used by a lot of other disciplines who want to give themselves the veneer of science. Teaching, education, for instance, uses APA. There's Chicago, there's a few others. I think it's a good idea that once you get in your field, you should work to remember the particular method that your field uses. Right now, we just want you to be able to follow directions. We use MLA. Well, there's not a great reason for it, except for a lot of us writing teachers were trained in MLA, so it's one we know without too much ado. Now, MLA does also dictate what papers are supposed to look like, and it should be relatively straightforward. Basic information at the top, your name, the professor's name, the class, the date. You would have 1-inch margins all around. Page numbering would be in the upper right-hand corner, your last name and the page number. This was because in the days when people would actually print out stuff to turn in, if you dropped your papers and stuff went all over the place, I could reassemble them if they had your name on every single page. The title would be centered, written in title case, not in all capital letters. I don't know why this particular page has the extra space between the title and the heading and between the title and the text. You should not. The text, double-spaced, Times New Roman, 12-point font. You indent new paragraphs 1 tab space, which is generally set to a 1/2 inch. You put 1 space after periods or other punctuation marks. This was a pain in the neck for me because I was trained by a typewriting teacher to put 2 spaces. In the old days of typewriters, you needed extra space after each period, but the way word processors work now is they will automatically put just a little bit of extra space after you hit punctuation. I actually had to train myself out of using 2 spaces between paragraphs. I know you all care about this so much. Italics for the titles of longer works and for emphasis. As far as the title of longer works, you mean things like books, things like journals, things like movies. They used to say you could underline them too, but let's face it, underlining looks ugly, so no one really wants to do it anymore. Your instructor may set specific requirements to the paper. Always follow your instructor's guidelines. When I was publishing academic work, I encountered this all the time because people would have variations of the standard citation method. I had one paper when I was trying to get it published. I ended up trying to get it published in a few places, and I ended up having to put the thing in like 5 different formats, including one that was completely and utterly made up. So, it could be worse. In-text citations. Basic one would be the author's last name and the page number. Pretty easy. Doesn't matter where it comes from. If it has a last name and page number, you put last name and then page number. If you do not have an author's last name, you do an abbreviated version of the title. If you do not have a page number, you just skip over it. Tricky. No author, title, and quotes. Article 65. Website. If no author and no page number, you just use the page title instead. 2 authors, use both of their names. Short story in an anthology, you would use the author of the story. Weird things, if there's an association or if there's a corporate author, then you'd abbreviate some words. If there's 2 articles with no author in the same title, you'd get to put the title and then the source it came from. By and large, for the most part, all you got to worry about for in-text citation is author's last name and page number. So that's easy enough. The other ones, you can look them up if it comes down to it. Now, MLA has gone through a few revisions, but the cool thing now is that MLA is actually pretty darn easy to follow. You have a set of 9 core elements, which you hit one at a time. If you don't have something for one of these, you skip over it and go to the next one. And it works this way for every single thing you might cite. Author, last name first. DuBose, comma, Mike, period. Title of source and container. Let's talk about the sources and containers. Containers are larger things which contain smaller things. 50 Essays is the container of our book. Plato's Allegory of the Cave is a smaller thing that's inside the container. Smaller works are nested inside the larger work, they say. I mean, if it's an article in the newspaper, it's title of the article, then name of the newspaper. You italicize container names, title of the source itself gets put in quote marks if it's from a smaller thing. The Simpsons is the container. The source, Treehouse of Horror 5. Containers go italicized if it's not in a container. If it's a book, a full book, it would be italicized. If it's a smaller thing that's in a larger thing, the title of the source, quote marks. Other contributors. What this means is if there are translators, if there are editors or things like that. Version and number almost always are just located for journals, for magazines and such, and they will be in the credit page of the magazine. If you don't have one, skip over it. Just like if you don't have an editor or another contributor, skip over that. Publisher. Publication date by year and location. Does not mean place of publication. It now refers to page numbers if it's a range. Let's say if I'm using an article in 50 essays, I'll pick one at random. If I'm doing The Ugly Tourist, which we did all those days ago, it would be, the citation would be author, Kincaid, Jamaica, period. Title of source, The Ugly Tourist, in quotation marks. Title of container, 50 essays. Other contributors, Samuel Cohen, editor. There's no version, there's no number. The publisher of this would be Bedford St. Martin's. This particular edition was published in 2020. It is 6th edition, so after you list 50 essays, you'd put 6th edition. And the location of The Ugly Tourist, since it's in the larger book, would be pages 227 to pages 230. Pretty straightforward. But we have some examples, and these are actually from the MLA's website. If you were doing an article in an anthology, the Cambridge Companion to Jane Austen, the author's name would be whoever wrote the article. Title of the source, the title of the chapter, the article. Container 1, it is in the Cambridge Companion to Jane Austen, so you look for the information on the title page. There's no version or number. It's published by Cambridge University Press. Publication date is on the copyright page, and location is the page numbers for the entry. Final works cited entry list underneath. Notice that works cited entries are put in what's called a hanging indent, which means the first line is on the left margin and everything else is indented a half inch. If you're one of the people who uses Word, you do this by highlighting everything and going into underneath the paragraph tab. There's a little button you can hit and it will do indents. If you have questions about that one, just ask me and I can show you. It'd be easier than trying to do it here. If you do a video on a website, well, there's no author for the Curiosity Rover report of August 2015. There's a title of a source, which is the title of the particular video we're talking about. The title of the container that it's in, well, it's from the NASA webpage, NASA's Journey to Mars videos. The web page has an editor given, so you write that down, edited by Sarah Loft. There's no version or number on websites. Publisher, NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Publication date is almost always listed on web page. You can see it down at the bottom next to number 8, but if it's not listed, you skip over it. Location would be the web link, and you see what the final entry would look like. A journal article retrieved from a database. Well, with these, you're probably going to get lucky because most of the EBSCOhost databases will generate the citation for you. But if not, this is an article with 2 containers. Author, Lawrence and Jutta. Title of source, the article Between Image and Wood, Color and Time, Jacob Lawrence's The Migration Series. The first container is the journal that this was originally published in, the African American Review. It's volume 40, number 3. Publication date 2016, page numbers within the journal. But your copy of African American Review was found on EBSCOhost. So you put that title of the container and you put the web page as the location. You might have to cite social media, and it's not all that difficult. Last name, first name, author's name, title of the post, blog title, date of the post, web address. It's the same kind of thing. Podcast, last name, first name, title of the podcast, podcast title, title of the podcast episode in quote marks, podcast title italicized or underlined, date of post, owner organization, web address. I can put this image up on Blackboard if anybody really wants to see it, or you can just pause this video and stare at it. Citations really aren't as hard as you'd think. You can also go to the links section of Blackboard, and it will show a number of links in there, which we'll go over. There's one on how to format your papers according to MLA. There's a couple on how to cite stuff, and there's even Noodle tools, which will ask you questions, you fill in boxes, and it generates a citation for you. How fun. Good citation practice is important, not only so you can prove that you're not ripping people off, but when you're a researcher or a reader on your own, you can look at the bottom and go, hey, this is who these people used. Maybe I should read them. And that's actually one of the better ways to do research. Find someone who you like, see who they've been looking at, and then see who they've been looking at. If you're using a lot of electronic tools, I believe you can do this on Google Scholar, you can do that citation search thing, but you can also do it the other direction to find out who cited this document. And it's a great way to immerse yourself within a web of knowledge. And that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? See you next video.